right. Hi, friends. Okay, so today for demo, I actually wanted to share some ideas with you for creating abstract art. Now, when I think of abstract art, sometimes I'm like, what does that really mean? What do those words mean? And so when Wendy used to do card classes, sometimes she would say, I'm going to do an artsy card today. And so when I was looking up ideas for abstract art, I was like, abstract art and artsy are kind of meld together. It's just kind of something where you're not really, you don't have to necessarily have we're making this for Halloween or Thanksgiving. It's more of just like, let's just create art just for the fun of it. Okay? So the very first thing I did is I pulled out a color palette. So things that all kind of go together. And this kind of goes along the same kind of lines of collage, just a little bit, in that we are pulling together different patterns and colors and everything that kind of goes nicely together. So if you are doing this at home and you're wanting to come up with some ideas for doing abstract art, my suggestion is to start finding things that are in a color palette that you're really inspired by. Okay, so I have some mesh green ribbon, some green suede paper, a couple handmade papers, some kind of sheer looking ribbon, even though it's kind of in the gray tone, it works, and some kind of mottled green paper, which is really beautiful. And so we have this kind of whole color palette that just looks really nice together. Okay, so now I'm going to get my background piece out here and we're just going to start creating some abstract art. All right, so let me grab my glue here and we're just going to start laying some stuff down. So what I want to do for my focal point, I'm going to work on that first so that I know that what my focal point is, and then I can build off of my focal point. So because I'm working in kind of an abstract style today, let's see here, what do I want to use? I'm probably going to go with this guy. And I'm working in the green tones anyway. I think I'm going to start out by making kind of a fun leaf shape. So I'm just going to kind of draw, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's kind of the cool part about abstract art, is that it can be just kind of artsy. It doesn't have to be perfect in any way, okay? So making some little stems, I'm just making like some little like leaves, and it's almost kind of on the verge of just kind of doodling. And I'm just going to kind of along these lines, and maybe I'll add in another one here, and I'll add another one in here. Okay. All right. I want that to be a little bigger. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to cut out my little doodle here. And sometimes when it comes to abstract art, it's about creating the movement or the theme that kind of lends the interpretation up to the viewer. So then that way, as someone looks at it, they say, oh, I see this, or this means this to me. And then someone else could look at that and say, oh, but that actually, it could be this. And so whereas oftentimes when we do like card making, or sometimes when we do like a canvas piece of art, we already have an idea in mind, like, oh, this is going to be a scene that has this, or has this sentiment. Whereas with abstract art, it's abstract. It's not really clear what the message is. So that's kind of a cool part, and also sometimes a little bit intimidating part of creating abstract art. So I'm just gonna have my fun little leaf shape here. So this has obviously kind of a nature, kind of a theme to it, much like we would with like collage have a theme. All right. This little guy. The fussy cutting part, of course, is the most time-consuming part of this. All right, there we are. So we have just a fun little leaf shape. You guys can see that up there. And then I think I'm actually going to cut this in half here so I can work in a smaller size. Oh, did I bring my paper cutter over? That's okay. All right, so I'm going to start out by kind of starting to do some layering here. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this paper, and for those of you guys that can't really see it, this is actually, onion skin paper, which is kind of cool. So all these little tiny little things, and those are just onions, which I thought was kind of fun. The paper does not smell like onions, but it is cool looking. I really like that. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut out a piece of my suede paper. And it's kind of cool to have the different kinds of neat textures as well as the different like the different like handmade paper kind of shapes and things. And I'm going to do kind of a ripped edge on this one, I think. All right, let me get out my tape. Whoops. Oh, goodness. All right, I'm going to put my suede on the left side here. Okay. Then I think for this, do I want to do the ripped edge there? I think I'm not going to, actually. I was going to, I'm going to do this more straight ripped edge on that side. Some more double-sided tape down. Edge. And then I'm going to take my little piece of paper here, and because this is kind of an abstract kind of artsy kinds of thing that I'm doing here, I'm also going to take, and I want to kind of create kind of a similar movement that I have kind of going on already. So I'm going to take and kind of cut out some of these like little teardrop looking things out of my paper. Okay. And then I'm going to line this up on my side here. So what we have, again, is we have kind of a similar movement with our little cutouts here as we have in our leaf shape here. And then we have our little cutouts that we just cut out that we'll put on the other side. So that way we have some balance. So again, with abstract art, it's interesting because you don't always know what you're going to get until you've created it. And so that can sometimes be a little bit harder for people to accomplish, because if you don't have sometimes a clear idea in mind, it can make it harder to accomplish what you want. But if you're doing it and you're wanting a little bit of guidance, I would say if you have a shape or a movement going on, to replicate that in some other way. Okay. All right. And honestly, I haven't created an abstract piece of art in quite a while. But when I was, like I said, when I was coming up with ideas, I was like, oh, I was so inspired by what some other people had done. And I was like, oh, it's not as difficult as I thought it would be. Because, you know, sometimes we get, I think, personally, I sometimes get a little intimidated. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that, or can I accomplish that in the way that I want? Okay, so I think on the side here, actually, let's see what this looks like. Oh, excellent. I'm going to take this down on my little corner area right here. So same with in the idea of doing collage, where we're doing that balance kind of a thing. What I'm doing is I'm balancing. I did this handmade paper on the side here, and I'm also going to do it over here so that it doesn't seem like it's out of place. Okay. I'm going to trim this down. Oh, I should have grabbed some larger scissors. Trimming on the edge of this is a little bit more difficult. With tiny scissors, but I love my tiny scissors so much that I'm going with it. All right. And I think in this fashion, I'm going to cut my mesh ribbon kind of on the skinnier side. Boop. And I'm going to go ahead and lay this down here. So it looks like it all is one strip there. Oops. And then this dark area, this dark stripe here right in the middle, is going to be nice for kind of a focal point where your eye is kind of drawn to that. So now we'll add in our leaf here. Oops. Double-sided tape. We have our leaf. And then I have my little dots left over for my little cutout on the side here. And I'm going to add those in here on the side. I'm going to turn that just a little bit. And again, this is kind of mimicking what I have over here on the far side. And then, just to add a little bit more, I'm going to take my watercolors here. For those of you that can't see what I've created so far, whoops, there's my camera. This is what we have kind of going on at the moment. Oh, it's mirrored, so it's opposite for me. So you can see that you have your kind of different dots, kind of movement here, here, and here. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to take some of my watercolors in here. And you can actually paint directly onto, whoops, the suede paper, which I thought was a really interesting idea because you can also do stenciling on your suede paper, which is kind of fun. I know. The first time I ever actually painted on the suede, I was really impressed because you can also paint with acrylic paint on your suede paper, which is also kind of cool. Of course, because it sinks into the, as soon as it sinks into the suede paper, you can't really move the watercolors around, so you have to kind of work kind of quickly. Oh, and since this is nice and wet, it's actually bleeding out. I didn't even realize this effect would happen. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you guys can see this, but as I lay down the wet, it just kind of bleeds out like that. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's actually very, very cool. So we're creating the same kind of dot kind of movement. Actually, that's
the
very,
only
very,
place
very cool.
I would possibly recommend would be Dakota Art downtown on Cornwall Avenue.
Okay, so there is our very abstract piece of art, number 1. All right. So again, the same kind of movements. I went with kind of a circle theme for this one, along with my leaf and kind of the greens and the different shades of greens. This darker green is picking up this kind of darker mesh green in the middle. So abstract, artsy, but there we have it. So there is the first one. All right, now we'll go on to my next one. Okay. Now,
those little leaves too.
I probably could have gone in and painted the little leaves, absolutely. All right, and now I'm going to bring another color palette into play. Let's see what else we can create. Thank you. Okay, now, my next idea, I wanted to use this amazing paper that has this kind of petals in it. This is one of my more popular papers, and I love that it has these kind of pink colors and things. And so I'm going to go ahead and just, right off the bat, I'm just going to mount this entire thing onto my piece of paper. Not the entire piece, but I want to cover this entire thing with this paper, because it is just such a beautiful paper. All right. And we're going to lay that down here. I'm going to pick an edge that already exists. Hey Taylor,
Yes.
can you bring me a larger pair of scissors, please?
Larger pair of scissors.
Yeah, like the black handled ones, maybe? I'm getting a lot of these jagged edges because my scissors are so small, which wouldn't normally be a problem, but this fashion is just a little small for me. Thank you. Thank you. These are the ones. Thank you so much.
Yep.
There we go. Much better. Okay. All right. So now we have this beautiful background to start with. And once again, we have some really incredible textured papers here that we're going to play with. Okay. I'm just going to cut a piece of this out. Lay this down. Let's see where I want to put this. Oh, right here. All right, and oftentimes when you're adhering the kind of textured papers, especially something like this that's so thin, I probably would not recommend double-sided tape. I have used double-sided tape in the past for adhering this, but because this one has so many little holes in it, then after you've laid it down, then you can always feel the stickiness on top, which I used to do that, and then I realized that it does not always look as good, and then it doesn't feel as finished because you have the stickiness, which always drives me absolutely, totally crazy. All right, and then I think I'm going to lay this down. I think I'm going to do pieces of this. I'll lay these down here. Some double-sided tape. Trim this up. I'll glue this down. All right. Oops. So a ripped edge, but that's okay. Moving scissors are going to cut that much better. All right. Now, what I want to do here, let's see if this is going to be the right color for me. I think so. I'm going to use one of my new markers here to just add some little, a couple more elements here to this. So I'm going to get my water brush here. I'll just pick up some of the colors. I'm trying to match this color that I already have going on here. And since this marker is already so dark, I'm diluting this down just to get a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to get another piece of paper here. I think this is kind of a mottled kind of pink color. It's kind of hard to see up there, I know, but this has, it's like a parchment, but it's pink, which is really beautiful. And so I'm just going to do a really quick watercolor. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, the fact that it's not perfect is actually maybe what we're kind of leaning towards. Oh, and this is, again, not really, doesn't need to be perfect in any way, and it's definitely not going to be perfect, and that's all right.
Looks pretty perfect to me.
Oh, thank you so much, Carol. Sometimes I have ideas and then my hand does not always do what my brain says, but you know, that's all right. And it's okay because that's oftentimes, you know, the world of art. Sometimes we think, I don't know how many times I've gone to draw something and I'm like, I have this locked in my brain, I know exactly what I'm gonna draw. And then I go to do it and I'm like, well, that did not turn out the way that I wanted. But then, there we are, it turns into abstract art. All right, just gonna add some little flower petals in here, kind of creating just some interesting kind of movement. And I'm just kind of doing this kind of repeated shape here, all over my page. Oh, I apologize for the noise. My neighbor, they're moving some stuff around. They have been recently. I think they must be doing some work over there of some kind. All right, so I'm having a combination of kind of some dark and light kind of colors here. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna just fussy cut some of these little things out here. The little section here that I like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to fussy cut around the shape that I've kind of created, even though it's kind of weird and kind of mottled looking, because again, I'm just kind of going with kind of the similar movement kind of a thing. All right. Okay. Years ago, I was in an expressive arts class, and it was really interesting because what it came down to was sometimes when you feel certain things, you are attracted to certain colors, or you're attracted to certain movements. And so, like, sometimes, like, if you're really frustrated, then we want to, we kind of do that splatter of that kind of, like, really intense colors, you know, or if we're, like, feeling sad, we're more drawn to kind of the more toned down colors. And so abstract art is actually a really amazing kind of a therapeutic a process, because sometimes we're thinking, I love the way this makes me feel, or I love how delicate this is. And so that's kind of an interesting kind of a take on creating art, is that you don't always have to create art for someone else. Sometimes you can just create art for yourself, because it just makes you feel something, or it's a great way to express yourself in a way you've never considered before. And so in this expressive arts class, one of the things that we did, and I thought this was so cool, was we took 3 pieces of paper and we wrote 3 different things on it. And it didn't have to be anything specific. Like it could be like my day, or it could be just like the words my day, or relationship, or next year. Okay, and then you mix them up and you flip them over so you can't see the words at all. And so then you're shuffling them up, and then you lay them down and you take them to the surface. And then you create abstract art. You just create art, whatever you're drawn to, whatever you want to create, you would just put on the paper. And then after the art was done, then you lifted it up and you would see that my day, and you turn it around and the art you created might reflect your day. And even though you didn't know what you were creating, it was really fascinating, like what you were drawn to and the things that you would lay down. And so it's kind of a really neat art, like it's just an artistic process, but just a really fun thing that you can do to kind of start getting an idea of how to kind of express yourself through art, even if it's kind of unintentional. It was a really interesting little thing we did. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because, you know, sometimes when we're creating abstract art, there's sometimes the question of, well, why? Like, why are we doing this, you know? And sometimes you don't need to have a why. Sometimes you can just do it just because. All right, and I'm going to go in here and just add some little details. I've just fussy cut all some of my little flowers here. All right, and I'm going to just add some darker color right here to the middle. Okay. This is my little flower over here. And I think I need to add in some little paint swatches. Something else that I really like, I don't know if you guys have ever had this thought, but I oftentimes love to see other people's artistic process. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that when you're kind of watching someone else create art, but it's really very cool.
And yours is really kind of fun.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. My sometimes crazy brain, we're like, we're going to do this. Just kidding. Actually, we're going to do this. It's kind of funny. But I also love color so much. And so this is kind of a cool idea where you can even just kind of, let's say you have a little piece of paper and you're testing out colors. Or you're thinking, oh, what would this look like? Or what would this look like? And then you have these like kind of leftover pieces kind of off to the side that was maybe like in your process, but then you can take those pieces and then put them into art. So here I'm just doing this little technique where I'm kind of watering down some of my inks. So I'm getting kind of lighter and lighter colors. So it kind of looks like a little swatch of color over here. And then lighter and lighter. And so my dark to light colors and all of those colors are in here. And so then you can kind of balance this kind of a little bit. I've kind of leaned back more towards my little circles here. Probably should have made these maybe a little bit more oblong shaped. Throw those in there too. And let's see what else we have here. I'd like to add in some more textures. How about we'll throw this in here. So I'm also going to go ahead and just paint my handmade paper the same color. I'm just adding in some more textures and some more colors here, just to kind of see what we can create.
Is that watercolor?
It is water. Well, this is actually Karen marker, one of my new markers I brought in, and I'm just adding some water to it just to get some different colors here, and it makes it so it's a little bit more of a wash. So then I'm just kind of washing that paper just to kind of get a different color on it.
There's watercolor base.
But it acts as a watercolor because the ink moves with water. Okay. All right, so just kind of see what's happening here. I'm just gonna dye the rest of this. I've got a little bit of purple on there somehow, not sure how, probably because it's on my watercolor palette already. Right. So I'm gonna lay that down. It's a little bit wet at the moment, but that's all right, we'll just glue that in place. Again, abstract, leaving the interpretation up to the beholder, up to the person that is looking at the art, because you don't know always what people are going to interpret or how people are going to interpret. And I think I'll do this one more. Yes. here as well. Just adding in some interesting textures. Oh, yep, we need that out of your way.
It's okay, just so.
Yep.
Not out of your way.
Put some little dots down here. Perfect. All right.
That's neat paper. when you
Yeah,
do
isn't that beautiful paper? I love that kind of handmade paper look.
Yes.
And that is actually a very, very popular one here too. I've used that one for making little lanterns as well in the past, and it is very, very fun to work with because the light passes through and really creates some really interesting designs.
The little frayed edges, though, when it's torn or something.
Yeah, isn't that kind of cool? I know, I'm cutting off the frayed edge here because I want to kind of make this so
Sure.
it's all staying on one little
But they're
canvas.
interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? Alright, and my little leftover pieces here, we'll just add this in. Cheryl has been making a lot of art journals here, and she's been doing this thing that I just absolutely love. She'll actually take little tiny scraps, like little tiny bits of ribbon, like really, really tiny little bits of ribbon, and little tiny strips of paper, and then she'll staple them to the top corner of her pages. Kind of like how sometimes on, I'm sure you've seen this on like printed papers, how they're wanting to make it look like kind of like a collage. And so they'll kind of add that kind of style up in the corner. And so she's been doing that, and it's just such a great way to use up some of your scraps of paper that you're like, this is so beautiful, but you don't really want to throw it away. So I thought that was a really interesting idea. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna put my abstract little bits and pieces in here, and I wish I had a piece of vellum, but since I don't, I think I'm actually just gonna cover this with this, so it's a little bit more background, a little bit more abstract.
Yeah.
I don't see why not, since I already have this movement kind of going on here anyway. And that kind of just kind of helps tone that down a little bit, so then I have a nice kind of focal point for my abstract piece of art here. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this down next. And what's also kind of cool is that then maybe after you're all done, you could go back in and you could say, what does this make me feel like? And you could say, at peace, or it makes me feel excited or joyful. And you can even just take a little simple word and just put it right on there. And then someone looking at that said, wow, that does make me feel joyful, or makes me feel happy, or makes me feel at peace. And so you're kind of also giving maybe your viewer an idea of like, hey, what about this? What do you think about this? And then that way it's more of a little bit more of a thinking kind of a thing, where you're leaving your viewer to think on that. Say, oh, I love what you've done there. Okay. So again, kind of having that artistic kind of feel to it. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this at the top here. And then this will be done on this guy. All right. I also love that my little area over here with my little dots is actually kind of covered up, which I really like. I think that's kind of cool.
That they show through.
They show through, but just a tiny little bit. Yes, I really, really like that. Oops, a little bit too much glue there. You can see I'm using the bottom of my glue. Sometimes I don't want to use my hands because they might be kind of dirty, so I'm using the bottom of my glue bottle, which absolutely works. All right. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up. And the thing with abstract art is that it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if it's not perfect, it's actually better. All right. Down here, this one little piece is kind of bothering me. So, oh, that's perfect. Oh, my teeth. Right. I'll leave this here. And if you happen to have like any, like in this case, some real like pressed flowers would also be super cool to add into something like this. Or something, you know, even if you have like a nature themed thing going on, you can pull in some real nature. I love to press flowers, so I really like the idea of adding in something a little bit more realistic into that. And I have this kind of sharp edge here, which is kind of bothering me. So I'm just gonna
Cover it up.
I'm just gonna cover it up, exactly. Yep, why not? Just a little bit more. There we go. Just kind of make that look a little, not as stark. I think that we're going to stop there on this guy. Okay, so again, it's very abstract, but kind of an interesting kind of a take on that. So, and then from a distance, you have this kind of interesting kind of movement here. So you have your different petals and it's kind of circular, so you have your kind of movement down here. It's a little bit more toned down, but then you have these little peaks of your little flower petals, which kind of goes along with your kind of flower kind of doodle thing. Okay?
Kind of fluffy with that paper.
Yeah, it's actually kind of cool, kind of fluffy looking with the paper. All right, okay. So I'm going to do one more.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just kind of fun. Something a little different. Oh.
You could soften. You could have butterflies into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, you certainly could. Like right on the top, that would be really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Consider that your base, and you could start doing them. Number things on top of it.
Yeah.
Flowers and butterflies.
All right. So let's say that you're not really sure where to start. So that's something that I oftentimes personally struggle with. Is like I just don't even know where to start. So a great way to kind of break the ice of starting an abstract piece of art would be to just start watercoloring just some little shapes down on your paper. And they can just be, I've already done a lot of circles here, but we're going to continue with my circle theme. Oh, and I'm just going to randomly lay down some colors. And I think what I'm going to actually do here is I'm actually going to work dark red to the orange color because I think that would be really fun. So I'm going to kind of head in this direction with the orange. And put some kind of lighter orange colors down here. Now this was kind of an interesting kind of an idea where let's say that you have lots of supplies, like you have markers, you got watercolors, you have textured paper, and you're wanting to kind of bring it all together somehow. So this is kind of an interesting kind of take. So once again, I'm just kind of adding some miscellaneous little doodles kind of in here. And then up here in the corner, I'm just going to do a quick little wash. Oh, I probably should be working on my craft mat, but I can always clean my table later. And we'll kind of blend this out to nothing. And then down here, I'm going to do some of my orange. And just a quick little wash down here. And we'll add in some more little dots. Okay. And then since I have this kind of wash kind of movement kind of going on anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and just add a couple more lines kind of in here. And make this a little bit more pronounced. Make these a little bit more orange. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go in. I'm going to use some of my little colors here. All right. So now I'm going to go in here over areas that are dry, and I'm just going to kind of do some of these kind of circle-y kinds of things around this. Maybe they're perfect, maybe they're not.
Kind of polka dots.
Yeah, kind of polka dotty, and I'm not doing all of them. I'm just kind of adding just kind of a little bit kind of here and there, and kind of, again, kind of accentuating this kind of movement that we already kind of have going on here. And I'm going to add in my yellows, since I love this kind of bright yellow. And you still have, instead of having a focal point specifically, you have these kind of darker areas on one side that's kind of drawing your eye more towards the center. And so what I love about really cool kind of abstract art is that when you look at it, you're seeing something different almost every time. And that's something that I absolutely love about art, is that even if you think you looked at the whole thing, you come back to it and you say, oh, but look at this detail. Oh, look at this kind of cool thing. And so I really love when art does that. And so by having all of these different kind of layers here, you're creating more for your viewer to see, okay? All right, so I'm just kind of going in here, kind of adding some double layers here, okay? And again, just add a little bit more color here. And kind of just blend these out. I don't know if you guys have ever done this as an adult, but have you ever just scribbled as an adult? you know, where you just kind of take the pen and just where you just kind of get some of that emotion out. It's a really interesting when you take that and then you just kind of do this here, kind of, and because then you get that feeling that kind of comes across, and it's almost interpreted when someone looks at the art, they say, oh, look at that. Oh, I didn't even consider. Because sometimes we think of scribbles as, oh, that's not artistic. But who says something isn't artistic, right? So you can just kind of, I'm just going to kind of scribble. To just make sure it's all going in the same direction there. And then we can take our fine line. We're going to take a black pen here. And then I'm going to go with my glaze pen, something that I really love. And now I'm going to take some time here, and I'm actually just going to just add like some little doodles and some little striping in here, following along my little scribble lines. Maybe they're getting bigger or they're getting smaller here. That's a great way to add some of your doodles into your art. And then maybe we'll do some swirls on top of this. And then we'll add some little dotting in. And we'll do some large dots to small dots. And we'll do some dot swirls that kind of go in that direction. And some striping around here with some little dots. And maybe we'll do some striping around here, opposite direction. And then, so I'm using a combination of just some dots and stripes, but I'm doing them so then that way it's not like all of my swirls are down in one area. I have some swirls with some dots, and then I have some striping. So maybe I'll do some other little striping in this direction over here. There's kind of color in here. So in this fashion, where these other two pieces we have done are a little bit more dimensional, this is all flat. So everything happening here is just all with different types of mediums, with your pens, with different colors of paints and things. You could certainly do this with like acrylic paint as well. And what's cool about the glaze pen is that the glaze pen will also bond to acrylic paint. So then after you've laid down your acrylic paint art, then you can go back in and add in some fun little things with your glaze pen if you wanted to. Just going to kind of blend these out to nothing. And we'll do something around here as well. And just to give me some more balance here, we'll add some of the little things in here. And it's kind of cool and kind of weirdly textured because I like that kind of stuff. Kind of person that I am. Oh, we'll do something here too. Okay, so call this doodling if you'd like, but I'm going to call it abstract. All right, so anyways, some kind of different, a little kind of fun. But yeah, just, you know, doodling, abstract, creating things that, again, kind of maybe express yourself, but also kind of help get that kind of movement and kind of emotion out. So that's another idea for you. All right, I got, let me see, what time is it at the moment?
Quarter till.
How much?
A quarter till 1.
Oh, 1:45. Okay, great, perfect. All right, so I'm going to do one more technique here.
This is fun. This is black doodle. Consider that even as a base to start playing on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
That's how I kind of see these
Yeah.
things. They're a base and they're there, but
Yes.
then you go back and
Yes.
add, yeah, it does.
You can add more things to it.
Add
Yes.
whatever, your
Yeah.
pertinent little fun things.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Absolutely. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some string. I'm just going to use some twine here.
Well, this one kind of looks like a bunch of comments flying from space.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I love that. One time, so years ago, I used to have really itchy skin. It was something that I battled for many, many years. And I remember every waking moment, it was just on my mind all the time. and I couldn't concentrate on anything else, and I wanted to create art. And so instead of focusing on itching, because that's what I wanted to do, I just drew instead. And instead of, when I would feel that sensation, I would just move my pen in a way that's like, this is how my skin feels right now. Kind of almost like that. So I just kind of have all these kind of jagged edges. And that was really interesting to me, because then when I look back on that art, I'm remembered of like, oh, I remember what I was going through, right? And so it's kind of a weird kind of a thing that I remember. But I also, sometimes when you have art that's helping to express like what you're kind of going through, you look back on that moment and say, oh gosh, remember when I overcame that, you know? And it's almost a story in itself. But I love how you're talking about how it's all kind of up to your viewer. Like you're seeing like comments and things, whereas like Linda was like, oh, I could use this as a base. For example, you can make this really magical, but if you did like little like butterfly die cuts, and you could put those on your little focal point, or you could even take acrylic paint and like wrap it around, and you could add in some other little things, or you can like write like a note to a friend, and you can write on the little lines, or you could write like little words around it, you know, like things like words that you love, like joy, happiness, you know, different things like that. So yeah, as a jumping off point is a really great idea. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to kind of work in kind of the reds. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to go ahead and lay this down here. So the first thing I've done here is I just took some twine and I just wrapped it around a piece of chipboard here. And then I'm going to lay this down. Bring this out. I'm using this inexpensive, really this nice chipboard because it's nice and sturdy, but also makes it so then you can make like little mini canvases or little pieces of art, and then they're just nice because they just stand alone, and they don't necessarily have to mount onto anything. They're just artsy art boards.
I just think those are a neat idea to start putting things on top of.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. I love that.
Dimensional things even maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to take another little piece. Oops. Oh, you know what? It's okay if it's not perfect. That's the thing. The whole thing today is that it's not perfect. All right, so now I'm going to do some different like thicknesses of lines. Thick lines, thin lines. Because I'm kind of trying to match this kind of movement I have with my twines here. These brush markers are so cool. I've been having so much fun playing with them. Well, the fact that you can do so much with them is just really impressive. Okay. All right. I'm going to just add this over here on my far side. And I think I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut this up. So it's kind of the chevron kind of look. I'm going to lay this down here, and then I'm going to match this right above this. So it kind of creates kind of a negative movement. Okay. Just to give it a nice edge here, I'm just going to put some red ink there in here. All right. And then I'm going to color this. Actually, I have some red acrylic in here. I'm just going to colorize my background here just a little bit. It's so interesting to me when it comes to color and emotion, because I don't know about you guys, but okay, I love every color of the rainbow. You guys all know that, because all the colors together bring me so much joy. But like, for example, like you always see like red as like passion, right? Either really passionate, maybe in love, or like really frustrated, or really angry, or like blue is like really peaceful, and yellow is so joyful and cheerful. It's so fascinating to me how different colors can create emotions in you, right? And so when you're kind of thinking about this, when you're starting an abstract piece of art, think about like, what kind of emotion do I want to kind of create here? Like, wouldn't it be so much fun to create everything in yellows? You have your sunshine, butterflies, little flowers, you know, cool yellow texture pieces. Maybe you even took a piece of tissue paper, and a yellow tissue paper, and you crinkle it up, and you lay down glue, and you push it onto the paper, and you have that really cool movement. So there's lots of things, and one, you're having fun, and it's creating joy to create, but also you're picking those colors that bring that out in you. That's kind of the interesting part about art, is that it's really healthy, but also you can create things that maybe you've never created before. You know, kind of pushing the limits a little bit. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting thing. I just took some watercolors in here and kind of moved them around
How
my
interesting.
my twine. It's kind of cool. I'm liking that quite a bit. All right, so I'll put this here on the side. Okay. And then I think I'm going to use, if I have this kind of pinky color kind of in here already, I might as well. Since we're talking about red and passion, I think I'm going to just do some quick little doodle hearts here. I'll go back in with my black pen. Go ahead and trim those out. So what I've done here is I've kind of did a double kind of a striping here. So then that way it kind of picks up on my extra striping I have kind of going on elsewhere. So once again, that kind of collage technique of like similar movement. You know what I think would be so much fun is if you did an abstract piece of art in every color of the rainbow. Oh my gosh, that would make me so happy.
Colorful.
Yes, it would be so colorful. Oh my gosh. But also, this is a great way to like use up some of my scraps or something, some of the things I have kind of left over that I'm like, oh, I want to create like really meaningful art for myself, but I want to use things that maybe, I don't necessarily want to buy anything new. I want to use something that I already have. And so then you could kind of look through your collection, much like I was looking through my collection when I was pulling up ideas for this. Because I was like, oh, let me find something that is this color, and then what else is in that kind of color palette? Here. Little hearts. And I have my plain red ones here. Oh, look. Actually, I think I like the black like that. All right. Let's see what else I can add in here. I do really like that. I don't know if that's going to match my movement here. I think this is what I'm going to do. Kind of like that it was a little bit more scattered. I think I like that a little bit more. I also love that the point that I have here, my little hearts, is kind of mimicked right here in my little chevron kind of look. I think that's really kind of cool. And I think maybe I am going to put that in here. So I do really like that. Because sometimes when the little pop of gold is kind of like a little bit of magic. I think that'd be kind of fun. I'm just kind of throwing things down here just to kind of see what sticks, what I like. Ooh, I love that. All right, this is what I'm going to do here. Okay. I'm just going to lay down some double-sided tape. We're going to stick this guy on. Okay. And my little miscellaneous hearts kind of here and there. And although I don't have any other black in my page here, this is actually drawing your eye towards the little hearts, and so this is kind of giving you a nice kind of focal point. Okay. And then I'm going to add this down here on the side. I'll lay that down right here. Tying that all in. All right, I did want to add this. Don't think so. I think I'm liking the way that that is. All right. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there because I like how that has looked, even though it is a little on the busy side, but I do really like it. So it just makes me happy.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. You want to see what that looks like? All right, so there we have just some interesting kind of ideas on creating abstract art. So when I always think of abstract art, I think of kind of creating emotion or kind of creating something without having a really clear plan in mind, but knowing that whatever you're going to create is going to be something that's beautiful, artistic, and expresses yourself. Because, like I said, art expression is really important to me. So, yeah. So just interesting ideas.
Yeah, get some fascinating die casting.
Yeah, isn't that cool? All right, guys. I hope you guys had fun. Thanks for joining me for demo.